So it's that time of the year again. Time to think about how much you want your salary to increase. Should you aim for 5%? I don't think so. That's barely keeping up with inflation. 10%? Maybe a little bit better. 15? Now we're talking. How about 100%? Or forget that. How about 1,000%? How about 10xing your salary? Now, let's be clear, I don't think that can happen in 1 year. But with some clear intention, you can definitely make it happen in a few years' time, and I'm going to tell you how. All right, folks, welcome back. This is the CMO on Sabbatical series. I'm Utkarsh Mohan. I'm 37 years old from Singapore, originally from India. For those of you who are new to this channel, I managed to retire at the age of 37. And this channel is really zero cost to consumer information on my approach, which is kind of trying to work smart, yet living and getting the things that I want from life. How I managed to turn that approach to help me achieve what I wanted. This is me trying to share some of that here. So now let's get into the topic at hand. I'm going to give you a very quick summary for myself. I'm not going to go through my career history here. That's all on my LinkedIn profile. But just to give you two pertinent numbers, my starting salary and my leaving salary, as in the salary at which I retired 6 months ago. My starting salary was 3,250 Singapore dollars a month, 2,600 in hand actually after CPF. Not particularly high or low. I would say on average for the time that I graduated, which was 2008. The salary that I left with, and I should not just call it salary, I'll call it compensation, because when you get to a senior level, salary is one part of it, then there's a lot of variable compensation. But I'll just give you the compensation. My last compensation was, and again, for the sakes of confidentiality, I'm not going to give an exact number. I mean, the first salary is 15 years ago. We don't care anymore, but this is very recent. The net compensation is about $400,000 a year. So literally 10 times what my starting salary was. Now, how does this happen? So before I get started into how you could potentially 10x your salary, I do need to give a caveat. What I will be sharing is from the perspective of doing a corporate job. There are multiple other ways of making money, which I know nothing about. So let's just take it with this perspective in mind. I wanted to give three particular approaches, but the important setting to these approaches is some hard realities about the world, about the corporate world. Let's just call them hard truths. Just taking some inspiration from the late, great Lee Kuan Yew. There are three hard truths that you have to know. One can hope for the world to be a certain way, one can be idealistic, but one also has to be practical, one also has to be realistic. So what I would like for you to do is to understand and absorb these hard truths, and then you will understand where the tips come from when I share them. Hard truth number one, we live in a capitalist system. Companies operate in a capitalist system. It is all about the money. Now, this is not to say that you do not have humans operating and living in a capitalistic system, but ultimately it is all about the top line and bottom line. So when companies make decisions, when companies decide to compensate, when companies behave in a certain way, it is happening because of them trying to grow the bottom line, grow the top line, maximize shareholder value. This is just a fact of life. It's just something we have to accept. Fact of life, or hard truth number two, imperfect information. This is something I did not understand, but working as a marketer in brand management helped me really understand this thing. We tend to think information around us is perfect. I think this happened, something else happened in the same way. If I'm doing a good job, people know it, so on and so forth. Reality is that the flow of information is never perfect. You may think something is good, but the way that thing may come across to someone else may just not be good or bad. The whole reason the marketing industry exists is you may have a good product, but there is no point of it being good because if no one knows about it. And even if a product is good, it doesn't mean that the information that goes out about it will necessarily be good. That's a very idealistic way of looking at things. So accept that information transfer can be imperfect. We'll get into this when we talk about the tips. And tip number 3, humans, people, not just in the corporate world, but in the world in general, they always tend to look out for themselves. This is not to say that people don't help other people out. And it's not that people are incapable of behaving selflessly. But this is a good rule of thumb in terms of assuming how things happen. Now, with these 3 hard truths, number 1, we live in a capitalistic system. It is about the money. It is about the bottom line. Number 2, information transfer is imperfect. Number 3, humans, people ultimately look out for themselves. Let's get into the 3 things that you should be doing to help you maximize your earning potential. Number 1 is about mindset. And the mindset here is a result-oriented and a business-oriented mindset. These are similar but not the same. Let's talk about it. Result-oriented mindset means that when you're working on something, it has to be about achieving a result. It is not about working hard. It is not about being in the office at 8 a.m. and leaving at 10 p.m. or whatever else it might be. It is about how are you achieving the result that you're setting out to achieve, that you've been asked to achieve, that is what the company requires from you. It's about are you achieving that result. It is not about how hard you're working. It is also important to understand how that result is oriented to the ultimate objective and the goal of the company. Now, you could say that if I think about the goal of a company to make money, then the only people who have their results and their KPI, so to speak, perfectly oriented with that are salespeople or marketing people. That may be correct. But every function in most companies has a big role to play to achieve the goals of a company. Sometimes it just means that you have to achieve a certain result or sacrifice a certain part of your result for the bigger good of the company while making sure that other people know that you're doing this. There is no point being stuck in a functional silo, that is, you only think, okay, my job is this, so I will only do this particular thing. And I don't care what that means for the results of the company, even though technically my result is getting delivered, my KPI is good, so I am happy. That mindset may work if you just want to be in your non-company driving oriented function. But it is important for you to be aware, and it is also important for you to demonstrate how you are concerned about your particular results helping drive the overall results of the company. I want to give one example, right? So I, of course, worked in marketing, and I worked with a number of folks who worked in, say, product supply, or say they worked in finance. There were 2 kinds of people, and there was a big difference in how the careers of each of these different kinds of people progressed. There were the kind of people who just looked at, okay, firstly, there were the kind of people who did not achieve the results, so let's exclude them. Let's just talk about result-oriented people. There were some people who were totally focused exactly on their scorecard to the point of myopic vision that they did not care what's going on with the company. It doesn't matter. I am achieving my scorecard. I'll give you an exaggerated example. Imagine that you have a product launch and it does really, 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 really well. Now, the same marketing and salesperson is very, very happy because they're going to get more sales the more you sell. But say someone from product supply may be like, wow, you're putting a lot of stress on the system. This is going to affect my KPI. I would love to help you, but it's going to affect my KPI if I put so much strain on the system. I would rather you sell as much as I can make, and that's it, we are done. Doesn't matter if the demand is 2 times that or 3 times that. This is an exaggerated example. But I saw less exaggerated versions of this argument often in my role. Now, what's going to happen? People who are evaluating you, when they look at you, they're like, okay, this person is able to achieve their KPI, whatever it might be, but they're not really thinking big picture. They're not really thinking from the point of view of the company. They're not really thinking of the point of view of being a business person. They're being very, very focused only on their little part of the pie. And that won't get you very far either. I mean, yeah, you could, of course. I'm not saying that this is going to not help you. You can still have a career, but You're not going to be the person who is going to get to places and get the opportunity to to get into more of a revenue generating or a business generating role to help you earn more money. Which brings me to the second point, role. The first one was mindset, if you remember, results and driving overall objective of the company. Second one is role. I referred to this in the first point. Honestly, if you really want to make more money, regardless of industry, you need to be in the function or the role that is responsible for driving revenue. That's just the hard truth. So this could mean getting to a higher level even within your functions. So say you are in purchasing, for example, get to a higher level in purchasing, then you're getting into all the business conversations versus just negotiating contracts lower level, as an example. Or you get into a role whose main job is to drive revenue. Say, again, I keep going back to marketing and sales because that's what usually happens in a consumer or most industries which are consumer driven, but there are several examples, business to business companies where it may be sales, people closing the contracts, multiple examples out there. Getting into a role that drives revenue for the company and where you have the responsibility of driving revenue is the way you get compensated. So, and it's dramatic. I mean, I'm not going to get into very, very specific numbers here because I'm not really sure about confidentiality. But it is shocking to me the difference in remuneration between, say, a senior management person, and a person at an entry level. Of course, some of it is variable. The entry level person will get there eventually. But you could spend years at entry level and not earn what someone in senior management earns in a good year. So I'm not saying that you have to promote yourself at the expense of everything else, but just recognize the more revenue responsibility, the more bottom line responsibility you have, the more you will get remunerated, and the faster you get there, the better. Again, I am not advocating that you kill yourself trying to get promoted. There are other ways to do this as well. I'll give you an example from a different industry. I have friends in industries where they're not necessarily managers, but they are quote unquote rainmakers. They get the revenue, they get the clients, they get in the big bucks for the money. They're not necessarily managing a big team of people, they're doing it, they're individual contributors who do this, and they still make a lot of money. The principle here is not that you need to have a big team or you need to get to this level, director or whatever. The principle here is you need to be responsible for making the company money, then you will make money. Third point. So we talked mindset, results, and company objective. We talked role, get into a role that makes a company money. Third one, an important one, something massively overlooked, is branding, personal branding. Remember what I talked about earlier. Imperfect information. What does this mean? You can be good. You think people have the right impression 100%. Okay, let's talk about this way. Think of how difficult it is for 100% perfect information transfer. Think of the game Chinese whispers. You may start off here and you may end up there. Information transfer is never 100%. This means that messages, things, impressions get distorted in the time that they go from person to person as they travel through the networks of human beings and information transfer. So for you could be doing a good job, but somebody else may have a different impression. You could be doing a bad job, and someone else could have a different impression. It is just a fact of life. It is not about life being unfair or whatever. It is just about acknowledging the realities of information transfer and being deliberate about it. This is where I want to introduce a model to you. This is not my model. This is well known in certain places that I have worked and certain circles that I have been coached in, have been fortunate to be in. And this model is called the PIE model. And honestly, if you absorb this, you will start looking at how you're working and how you're designing your career and your interactions in a different way. PIE. P stands for performance, I stands for image, and E stands for exposure. Let's get into each of these things. P is performance. This is how well you do your job. Think about everything we talked about being results-oriented, not just working hard. That is the base on which your career advancement lies. You have to do a good job. You have to get your results. You have to get things done. I and E are very important. I'll get into them in a second, but they do not exist without P. If you aren't able to get P in place, you can distort I and E for a while, but ultimately it'll be like a house of cards and everything will come falling down. Now let's get into I and E. So P is assuming you're doing a good job. I is the impression that you're giving is that you're doing a good job. So think of it. If you have a good product, the marketing of it should say that it is a good product. The messaging of it should be correct. And it is no different for individuals. So I is the image. What is excuse me, what is the image that you are projecting, that you're creating, that you're deliberately crafting? Is it accurate to the good work that you're doing? You have to be very, very deliberate about it. What does this mean? This means that when you are getting something done, it is not necessarily about you being a braggart or boasting about yourself. If you have done something good, people should know about it. People should be aware. If your boss gave you something very difficult to do, there are two things that you can do. One thing you can do is you can bitch and moan about it and you'll be like, oh, it's too difficult, etc. Or the other thing that you can do is, if you know you can get it done, if you think it's within, you can get it done. And then you can be damn well sure that your boss, whoever it is, knows that you got it done with minimal fuss, as an example. So the point of I is there is no heroism in working in silence and working in darkness. If you're doing a good job, people should know. And people should have an accurate picture of the good job you're doing. And this is done via the interactions that you have with people. This is done by deliberately giving people the right message at the right forums that, hey, this is what I have done. This is how I've contributed. This is not necessarily you attracting attention to yourself. Trust me, there is ample ways to do this without necessarily bragging about yourself. It could just be how you talk in the meeting. It could just be how you talk in the public forum. It could just be an email that gets sent out as the usual update. Think of the multiple interactions that you're having with stakeholders, whether the stakeholders are senior to you or your peers, and make sure that whatever image that you are crafting, it is accurate to the good work that you're doing. So that's the second part of it, image. E is exposure. It's all well doing a great job, excuse me again, and having a good image. But what's the point if the only people who know about it are the two people sitting in the cubicles? Excuse me, I don't know why I'm coughing so much. Next. There's no point if the only people who know about it are the people sitting in the cubicles next to you. You need to have the right people know about you. Now, I have seen some people who take this to the other extreme end when their entire purpose in life is just to, pardon my friends, suck up to the right people. But, sucking up can be very, very of a double-edged sword. If you don't have substance and you're still just trying to expose yourself to the right people, people will look right through you. I mean, I have lost count of the number of people that, I believe, when I was in a senior position where people are reaching out to me, they are trying to make sure I know what they're doing. So they have the E part down, but they don't have the P part down. So performance is the most important thing. And on the contrary, I have plenty of people that I know who are doing a solid job, but they're not deliberate about making sure that other people know about it. There are two parts to this E. There is something that you can do personally to your level up, and it is something that you should also demand of any good manager of yours to help do for you. A good manager is always helping drive exposure for their good reportees, and same for the one-up manager as well. So at a bare minimum, you have to make your manager and your one-up manager advocates for you to help drive your E or exposure. And that makes all the difference, because this is how, going back to point number 1 and point number 2 of mindset and of role, this is how people in the correct places become aware of your results-oriented mindset, your business-oriented nature and performance. This is how you get the chance to potentially get into a role which may be more revenue generating, so you can earn more. Now, this is not a comprehensive theory of how to succeed in the corporate world. This is but a small introduction. But I hope that you've gotten a little bit of a flavor of what it takes to dramatically grow your compensation over time. This is not about lucking out. This is not about, there is a lot of luck in life for sure, but the thing with these tips and this mindset, and these three things that I mentioned to you is that if you're very deliberate about these things, being results oriented, driving the company's objective, getting yourself into the correct roles where you can grow the company, revenue, top line, whatever the objectives might be, and be very deliberate on personal branding, this will give you the best chance of doing the best that you can. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I will be back next time with more. Till then, have fun and keep at it.